everybody, and welcome back to the Owner's Box After Dark. I am your host, Mark Farinella, the former, I had a million jobs at the Sun Chronicle in Attleboro, Massachusetts for 41 years, but for the most part, the most important thing I did was I covered the Patriots and I covered high school sports, and I love both. So, with that out of the way, welcome to episode 26. I had to make sure I got that right because my last episode I said that I was on number 24 and I was actually on number 25. We did run a little scroll at the bottom to make sure everybody knew that that was the case. It is the 13th of November, Friday the 13th. 2020, of course, the year that just won't quit, but finally some good news from 2020, of course. We are, of course, at Fulton Pond Studios, the palatial surroundings. New backdrop today. Although I think you've probably seen it before. I just moved it from the other studio. And, of course, let's see. What do I want to get caught up on first? Before we get into anything at all, let me explain what my the beverage of the night is made by me. With my owner's box cup, I always have to sell the product. This is a cup of homemade Starbucks. It's what they call Morning Joe. You buy it at the supermarket, not at the stores. During the height of the pandemic, in which we are now at about, I think, week 36, about wrapping that up, when it was almost impossible to get anything at the supermarkets, I grabbed the only thing I could find on the shelves because all of the Starbucks franchise stores around here were closed. So I got this Morning Joe stuff, and I didn't even realize it had already been ground. I like to grind my own. I have both a coffee maker that grinds, and also I have a proprietary grinder as well. But I make it. I don't know. We'll see how it tastes. I've never actually run it through this coffee maker before. So I figured I'd open it up and see what the case may be. So, yeah, it sounds like it's going through sand whenever it first starts grinding because obviously there's nothing to grind, no beans. It's already ground. But it went through the machine, and let's see. Tastes pretty good. You notice this foam on the top of this. Well, that's not cappuccino type of foam. What that is whipped cream. I whip up some whipped cream. I put Splenda in it, so it's not too sweet, or not. It's sweet, but it's not diabetically killing sweet. And I whip it up, and since I don't have a espresso machine, which I did, maybe one of those days I will expend some money and haul it out and get some big fancy thing. But in the meantime, I can get those coffees right down the street nowadays. So. But for my own making at home, I enjoy this. It's good. It's smooth, and I like the whipped cream topping on it. And that stays there nice in place, and it finally becomes part of the coffee. So you're getting a good coffee flavor at the beginning. And you're not getting it's not too milky at the start because you get that unmixed coffee coming up at you, and that gives you a good old jolt. Let's see, the dinner of the night, I already had a lobster roll, and now I'm chowing down on some of my favorite things. These are clam cakes from the Fresh Catch in Mansfield. You folks in North Attleboro have one as well. The Sarro family, long history in butchering in the north end of Mansfield. I mean, they had the meat market up there, and now the next generation runs the fish market and also still has meats and stuff like that. But they're about the only place you can get clam cakes around here. Let me take a bite first. Oh, I do love these. Clam cakes are sort of a Rhode Island delicacy more than a Massachusetts delicacy. I'm going to be chewing for the next 5 minutes. But fortunately, they make them over at the Fresh Catch, and I get 6 of them. And sometimes I eat them all in one sitting. Sometimes I'll just save 1 or 2 and heat them up in the microwave later on. So the Fresh Catch in Mansfield, in the corner here, we will run the address, the address of the store, and you can actually order online nowadays too, which is what I do normally. And if we don't run into another store closing pandemic, I'd get some clam cakes. The mood candle for the night is the Macintosh again. I do enjoy it. Smells good. A little appley smell here in the house. It's almost the time. I'm starting to feel a little bit more Christmassy, I guess. Life seems a little bit nicer of late with the results of the presidential election. But until that really does take effect in January, I suppose we still feel like we have a stone in our shoe, as my Italian cousins would say. The Christmas, the pine smell will really kick in soon, and I'll be lighting up all those. But in the meantime, I still want to have a little bit of an autumnal smell here. We've had some great weather. It's finally turning a little bit here. We've had a couple of days of rain, which will help the drought situation, but any growing around here is out of the question. I mean, that's all over and done with. Yes, we have Hugh Hefner's pipe. Chew on it at least once during an episode, just to remind you that this is the owner's box after dark. This is in a new position tonight, and the mixing box is a long way away. You know, this is a kitchen table that my parents bought years ago, and it's now got a computer. It's got two risers, so the computer shoots me straight on instead of you looking up my nostrils. It's got the mixing board. It's got these things hanging on the sides. It's got lamps. It's got my new oval halo light. And the mixing board now is just sort of farther and farther away from me, and I have less space here. I have to move the mixing board just a little bit closer. I don't have any space to write on this table, though. I should rig something up. Then on the other side of the table, I have a full computer for whenever I can have guests in here again. And also, at the end of tonight's episode, I will tell you that we do have some good news about guests. Yeah, and on the other side, I have to have the mood candle and the food, and I'll put the coffee cup down there. So I'm sort of running out of room here. I really probably should put a table to what would be my right, your left, as you're looking at it. And I would able to put, maybe I could even put the mixing board on that. But I think I like the mixing board where it is. I just have to move the things a little bit closer to me. Okay. So that brings us back to, as I said, episode 26 of The Owner's Box After Dark. Oh, my. I'm going to try some of the other settings as we go along. Okay, first topic of the night, and I won't waste a lot of time on it. The New England Patriots. They played the New York Jets. The winless New York Jets. And it took a 51-yard field goal by Nick Folk to win the game as time expired. Now, I don't want to rain on Nick Folk's parade. He did win the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week award, which, well-deserved. He went into the game with a sore back. He was listed on the injury report all week with a sore back. And he comes in and basically was pretty outstanding to hit that field goal with a couple of yards to spare, too. It might have been good from 53, 54, but not much farther than that. But the fact remains is that how do you allow yourself to be in a game with a really pathetic team like the New York Jets? And the Jets were leading the whole way until in the second half they started doing Jets-like things. Just having all sorts of issues. I just feel like the Patriots have got to do something to get their heads in the same place. And I'm not so sure that they're all in the same place. And my indication of that would be the reaction that Bill Belichick is having to some of the questioning he's getting some of these days. And he's getting tougher questioning these days from the local media, and deservedly so. Let's face it, they are, what are they, 3-5? I think so. Anyway, and they're not, they're struggling to put the full 60 minutes into each game and put it all together offensively and defensively. I mean, I would say this was a pretty good offensive game in many ways. As I look at the totals on my phone here, they rushed for 159 yards in the game. Damian Harris, 14 carries for 71 yards. Rex Burkhead for 12 for 56. And Burkhead is playing pretty well this year. I'm still waiting for him to get hurt, which he does every year. But if he doesn't, it's a shame it's being wasted on this campaign. Cam Newton, a decent passing day, 27 for 35, 274 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 99.0 passer rating, which is, I think, his best of the year. Now, here's the bright spot, I guess, if you want to call it a bright spot. Jacoby Myers. Now, you may recall, there's a kid who had a great training camp a while back, but immediately got on Tom Brady's shit list once the regular season started and practically never saw the ball again. Well, Myers is becoming Cam Newton's binky, no question about it. 12 catches out of the 14 targets, 169 yards out of the Patriots' 274 passing yards. Whoa. Pretty darn good, huh? That's maybe this is the opportunity he needed to gain some confidence and to show that he actually can play in the National Football League, which would be nice. They really need to do a lot in the offseason with wide receivers. And here's one of the things. Now, Belichick was asked today in his morning press conference if he had time to think about why he's had so many bad drafts and why that's causing talent problems. And I'll paraphrase him here because I don't have the quote nearby, but what he basically said after a long pause, and I believe the questioner was Tom Curran of whatever it is, these NBC Sports Boston, I think he is. And the answer was something to the effect that, well, nobody was complaining about it when we were winning all those games, which isn't exactly true because we've been complaining around here for a long time that he can't draft receivers. He really can't. He's struggled at that. The best receivers they've gotten in here have been surprise guys or guys they've traded for or whatever, but they weren't homegrown. They just have had a miserable run of luck with the people they've drafted. So Bill's getting a little defensive these days. He's also been offering excuses and claiming that this was a salary cap adjustment year. I think he's trying to do just about anything he can to not admit, perhaps, that maybe Tom Brady's departure may have had more of a significant role than he thought it would. So, anyway, the Patriots are still on course to a 7-9 record if they follow the course I set earlier in the season. And you remember the Denver game is the one where the deficit came about. I originally had them picked at 8-8. They are heading for a very tough stretch of games, and it starts on Sunday night, the NBC game where they go to Baltimore to play the Ravens. I can't see them winning this game. I really don't. I mean, they might play them tough. Maybe this will be the defense's week to get out of its funk. Now, here's a question. We've seen Chase Winovich early on in the year, linebacker that looks like the mighty Thor, but he's playing like Jane Foster, at least in the eyes of the coaches. And if you know, in the next movie, Jane Foster becomes Thor, but that's enough nerd talk right now. He had a low of like 5 snaps on the field, I think 2 weeks ago. I think he had to play more last week just because they had so many people hurt. And they're entering this game with an injury list the size of a city block. So I just think, I don't know what the case would be. I have a feeling this kid could be a special player, but he seems to be being handed these messages by the coaching staff. Let me tell you one thing. This coaching staff is not the coaching staff of years past. I think there are a lot of people on this team, on this coaching staff right now, who are learning their way as well. A lot of young coaches, too many coaches named Belichick, I'll tell you that. Yeah, what the hell, I guess after 20 years of coaching and 6 Super Bowl championships, you get to play with nepotism a little bit, but I'm beginning to wonder whether this was the wisest move. Their experience level on the coaching staff is not great right now either. So anyway, I think they lose to the Ravens on Sunday night. We shall see. And that will keep them again still on that track. The Houston Texans are next down at Houston. I think the next game after this. That's one I think that the Patriots can pick up. I think they can pick up that W. I'll have to check the schedule here for a second afterwards, but whatever the case may be, I still think they can get on track to 8-8, and then you get that stretch where they have like 3 road games in a row, including the 2 games in Los Angeles, a Sunday game against the Chargers, and then a Thursday night game against the Rams. Now, they might be able to steal one of those, but that is a tough schedule. Made even more so now. Surely they will spend the whole time out there on the West Coast, but even more aggravating about it is under COVID-19 restrictions, these guys won't be able to leave their hotel rooms practically. So we'll see how that affects them over that span of having to play the 2 games in a short span and stay out there for that. But there's a chance they could get back on track, but there's an awful lot of pieces that have to get back in place for them to do that. Okay, one thing that was lost during these last few weeks was the fact that the Red Sox rehired Alex Cora as their manager. And, of course, Alex, coached them to a World Series championship, and then he had a kind of a bad season after that, and then he got caught up in his time with the Houston Astros and the cheating scandal they had of the sign stealing stuff and all that. I can't say sign stealing without stumbling on it. Sign stealing, stumbling. Anyway, but all is forgiven, and he is back, which was predicted by me and baseball writer Maureen Mullen, who was a guest on the Owner's Box, the audio version of the Owner's Box. And, of course, we did split that with the Owner's Box after dark. So let me run a couple of seconds of that, and we'll prove how smart we are.
What really frustrates me is how lackadaisical and sloppy this team looks at times, too. Just dumb mistakes out there, base running, fielding, decisions they make. And it's, to me, it's if they haven't been drilled in even the basics of baseball. Is Ron Renicky out of his element? Will the Red Sox be looking to can him at the end of the season, then possibly rehire Cora once the suspension's over? And really, is that even enough to straighten this path out? Because this team looks like the Rod Rust Patriots to me before other people came in to try to straighten out the mess.
I think that's a good question, and I've thought from the beginning that the Red Sox will probably bring Alex Cora back after the suspension is up after this year, and I'm not basing that. I don't have any inside information on that. I was just sort of a gut feeling.
So there you have it. 2 intelligent people telling you what everybody in the world knew was probably going to happen anyway. But at least we said it. So, all that being said, I think that's a good move for the Red Sox. Now they just have to address pitching and getting guys to stop swinging at everything that comes at them, and relief pitching especially. And then, we'll see what happens. And we'll see if they can have a better 162 games next year than they did the 60 games that we suffered through this year. And now, let's take a break for this message.
Bud Light, please.
I'd like to buy you that Bud Light.
No, thank you.
But I insist.
Ay. Hey, you don't hear the lady, my friend? You got hair gel in your ears, lover boy?
Hey, step back, huh?
Step back? I step back to hack and sack right after I plucked you clean like a turkey puppy. Adios, muchacho.
Fresh, smooth, real. Bud Light. It's all here.
You don't want to go there, papi.
Hello again, and welcome back to the Owner's Box after dark. Did you see that chunk of clam cake in there? I should have finished this up before I hit the button, but time is money, as they say. That commercial you saw, in fact, is another one of my 16 or 17-year-old collection. These were commercials apparently that were found unsuitable for the American audience. So, as you saw, the one I used in the last episode with the hopeful young man writing his marriage proposal in the snow with his urine. Great commercial. I'd really love to know who that girl that came out of the house was. She was cute. But as for this one, this Bud Light commercial, whoever did the Al Pacino impression for the parrot there, or whatever that bird is, that was excellent. And but apparently those never made it. That one and a few other Bud Light commercials I have never made it to the American audience. We're such prudes over here. But nothing at all like those Japanese commercials where you just have absolutely no idea what the hell they're talking about. And I will get some more of those. Just got to get a little software upgrade so I copy them a little bit more clearly and with better sound than what you've heard before up to this point. Okay. Topic 3. I lose track. COVID-19 versus sports is what I wrote down on my little sheet of what I want to do tonight. Okay. We are, as you know, in a resumption, a terrible resumption of this pandemic. Cases are going up and up and up. There are something like 100,000 new cases in the United States today, which just frightens me. Again, I've told you before, I've been tested twice. Most recent one was October 30th. Still fine. I had my flu shot yesterday, so I have got more products of the American pharmaceutical industry running through my veins than most anybody would, and hopefully that's what's keeping me alive. So the reason why I want to mention this, I will not go deeply into it because we've been there, and we all know that it's still pending, the decisions on the winter schedule. What right now, there's like a 5 or 6 step process that has to be completed, and I will have a graphic up on the screen that shows you that. They've only completed, as of this taping, one of the steps. The first one was to get the report from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs about whether they felt that sports could be conducted with reasonable alterations for safety's sake. And that does appear to be the case. But now there's all sorts of things that have to go through. First thing was the sports committees of the MIAA had to meet, come up with lists of their proposed safety measures. After that, that will go back to the Sports Medicine Committee of the MIAA, which I've mentioned before is a very powerful committee. And then that will go to the Board of Directors, and the Board of Directors will have to vote on it. And I think then it goes to the governor's office or whatever the case may be. You'll see it all on that list. I'll leave it up here long enough for you to keep up on it. But other than the first step, nothing that we know of has happened. Now, I will have a coach coming in here later, early next week, actually, who might be able to tell me some things about it, and we'll talk about that in a while. But this is the quiet before the storm, I'm afraid. Sports, winter sports, basketball and hockey especially, are supposed to start November 21st. That's when practice is supposed to begin. And we're getting pretty close to that. Schedules aren't out yet. Nobody's really aware of what they want to do. I'll tell you a couple of leagues. I know the Bay State Conference and the Patriot League, among them in high schools locally, have already voted to postpone a further one more week to start their practices, just to really get a feel for what effect Thanksgiving get-togethers may have. People are afraid that if families have big Thanksgiving gatherings, as they've had in the past, that COVID-19 could be spread throughout those, and kids could start showing up with positive results. So then we've seen in the last couple of days, the Ivy League and the Massachusetts State College Athletic Conference have both canceled their winter seasons completely. So that's pretty big. You have a Division I league there and a mostly Division III league, and I expect a lot of the Division IIIs to go. Now, one person who you've seen on this series of podcasts, or heard anyway, Missy Traversy, the head coach at Adelphi University, and of course former Bishop Feian High School standout. She, Adelphi, the Panthers are a Division II school, and they are planning to start their schedule early in January, which means, and they're actually already at practice. I see Missy has had several posts on the internet showing how hard her kids are working. In fact, I hope to be able to get her on for a return visit, which would be her third, I think, from the joys of Skype. We will probably be able to hook up and share that with the Owner's Box and the Owner's Box After Dark. So stay tuned for that. But I'm afraid that as you hear the college season starting to fall, I feel that that's an influence on the high schools. Now, it was written and reported in several places that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts actually worked in conjunction with several surrounding states to kind of get a consistent series of guidelines for sports. And one of them has been no out-of-state competition. Now, I don't know exactly yet, and this is something that has to be answered. It's a good question that has been asked, and we're awaiting the answer to it, is what about the border schools? What about a place like Seekonk? You go up in the North Shore and all those schools right around the top near the New Hampshire border. A lot of these schools schedule teams from Rhode Island because it is easier for them to travel just a few miles to play competition that's close by than it is in their own leagues. Like Seekonk has to go as far as Wareham in their league competition. So, but according to all indications, any crossing of the border is not is verboten, as they say this year. The other question that arises from that is kids that go to a school like Bishop Feian. Bishop Feian has a lot of kids in that school from Rhode Island. And it's my understanding that the EEA has established that if you are enrolled in a school in Massachusetts and you are from a place like Woonsocket or Pawtucket or any of the surrounding area, you can compete with your team. But you cannot compete on any, let's say like an AAU type of situation, or you know how some kids might even play AAU softball in the wintertime while they're playing basketball for the MIAA team. You might find that they will look very unkindly at playing a second series of sports, games, against competition within Rhode Island, and then coming into Massachusetts to play for the high school team. That may not be permitted as well. So that will impact maybe not the sports that are going on right now, but if you're a kid who thinks you've got a future in softball and you're playing in these little indoor situations or whatever, or indoor soccer or whatever the case may be, you may feel that restriction might be unfair to you because it might inflict some sort of harm in the manner of how you can get noticed by college scouts. So that's something that has yet to be resolved. But I think the biggest thing is the border schools. Not many of our schools, I mean, Attleboro rarely crosses the line. North Attleboro might have played 1 or 2 games against Cumberland in my lifetime, but not too many. The competition basically is usually inferior in Rhode Island. I'm sorry, I'm not insulting anybody. It's just a fact. You go across. I mean, I know that the Attleboro girls basketball team played in a tournament down in at Classical High, I think it was, or someplace anyway. Or maybe it was one of the Pawtucket schools. I can't remember. And, Attleboro cleaned up in that tournament, and that wasn't really that good of an Attleboro team either, but they certainly, there's something about the level of competition that they are competing at that is higher than what the other schools were at, and the results bore out in competition. So these are all a lot of questions that can't be answered yet, and I hope to hear some things. If not, well, there won't be today, so it'll have to be by the middle of this coming week, and we shall hopefully get some further guidance as to how to proceed. My biggest fear, personally, is not knowing the schedules and not being able to figure out what games I'm going to be able to work for the 3 cable systems that I work for. But that is obviously a minor concern. The biggest concern is, will the kids actually be able to get back out there? If these COVID numbers keep going up, and right now this pandemic is back with a vengeance, I doubt. I don't think they want to take this extreme course. I think they will probably not allow fans in the stands at some point. Right now, the idea is to at least allow 50% capacity of the gyms, but that may go out the window. I don't want to think that they'll go back to a lockdown, but they might have to. And I'm scared about that prospect, because I just think it's going to be too heartbreaking for a generation that's already endured a little bit more of a loss in this regard. And obviously, it's not the most terrible thing that can happen to these people. But when you're young and you have a lot of your life invested in something like organized sports, and you have it taken away from you, you don't always hear the reasons why it was the right thing to do. You just sort of sit there and you feel bad about it. I think kids understand after a while once they start to think about it. I mean, I know that there was a lot of heartbreak, as I said, last March when the winter seasons ended with just 1 game left on the schedule, the championship games of the state tournament, and then the loss of the entire spring season. That was brutal for a lot of people. Moving football to March, and again, the EEA seems to have given the thumbs up for football, but that could change under changing circumstances that can't be controlled locally. So right now, I think all high school sports going forward in the Commonwealth are at risk. And I hope for the sake of everybody involved that whatever decision is made is proven to be the right one. And by the way, one question I saw raised on the internet, which is not always the smartest place, it was actually on the Sun Chronicle's website, where a couple of complaining parents were whining about how their kids wrestled, and I don't know why they can't wrestle and all this. And when it was pointed out to them that transmission is at its highest risk when kids are grabbing and sweating all over each other, they just didn't want to hear it. Because, let's face it, in this day and age, facts aren't facts unless you think they're facts. So if you think that your kid's getting screwed because of the coronavirus, then nothing else that anybody can tell you will make sense. But the fact is, wrestling is a sport that can't proceed right now under these restrictions. So, and I feel bad for every kid that's involved in it. But the question that was asked, however, is, well, I bet the basketball players won't be wearing masks. Well, indeed, they will be. It has been established, right? It's very prominently stated in the EEA restrictions or the guidelines that all competitors, coaches, spectators, media members, you name it, anybody in the gym has got to have a mask on. And yes, I do know how to broadcast a game with a mask on. I did it throughout the soccer and field hockey games that I did for North TV this year. And you know what? It didn't sound all that bad. My glasses kept fogging up. That was a tough situation, especially with the distance between you and the players. Basketball's a lot closer. But it was sometimes I looked like it looked to me like they were playing in pea soup, as they said. But I guess let's just hope that everything can be played and we'll all be a lot happier. Speaking of a lot happier, today, Friday the 13th of November, 2020, according to CNN and several other news gathering organizations of some merit, the presidential election finally came to an end. CNN called North Carolina for President Donald Trump, as expected, and they called Georgia for President-elect Joe Biden. And that finally gave him a total of 306 Electoral College votes to 232 for the lame duck president. And that is actually pretty much the score, as you can say, I'm going to call it a score. That's pretty much the total that reversed in Trump's election over Hillary Clinton. So Trump, you might recall, was touting 4 years ago how it was a great landslide when he lost he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes, and yet he was calling his victory a landslide because he had the right number of electoral college votes. Well, I guess that means that Joe Biden's won a landslide, and he has something like 9 million more votes in the popular vote race than Donald Trump. Trump actually showed up today to give a speech about Operation Warp Speed. Da, 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 da. He looked like hell. Yeah, even that thatch of whatever they call hair on his head wasn't even in the right place. There's a guy who, I'm just afraid, take the nuclear football away from the officer that has it. Put in give him a bag full of Three Musketeers bars or something like that. That'll keep Trump happy, in case he feels like he wants to nuke Montreal or Ottawa just because Justin Trudeau was nasty to him, or and so on and so forth. I could see him wanting to drop one on Angela Merkel too. Just give him a bag full of Three Musketeers and Snickers, and he'll be real happy. So we just have to wait till January 20th. Hopefully things will be getting a lot better. I'm looking forward to that. So that should be about it for tonight's episode. Try to keep it quick, a little economical, as they say. We will have a guest in studio next week. And, well, not in studio per se. We'll be doing it by Skype, but you know her, you love her. She's been on the show 3 times already. This will be her 4th time. Foxborough High School girls basketball coach Lisa Downs. And the main reason why I want to talk to Lisa is because she's pretty plugged in as to what she's expecting right now for the season that's upcoming. I want to talk to her seriously about what the planning is right now, what the fears are, what alternatives might be in the offing. I also have to ask her, and I'm not really sure if many of her kids played. She's got not a whole new team this year, but a lot of new people. I mean, she lost a good senior class from last year. But I'm wondering if any of the kids played AAU ball in New Hampshire, as so many of them did this year. during the summer, we lost our summer leagues around here and some of the invitational tournaments that involved high school teams or teams that would be representing high schools later on. But the AAU teams mostly just went to New Hampshire and played in tournaments there where their restrictions on social gathering was not as, I guess the restrictions were not anywhere near as restrictive. Pardon the redundancy there. But the question is, did any of them come back with COVID? I haven't heard any reports of any coronavirus infections from that. So maybe that's something that the state should keep in mind as they make these final decisions. But I'll ask Lisa how she's thinking about that. And then we'll just get into a couple other happy topics and see how she's doing. We haven't talked to her since May, so... also, I've got a couple other people on the cusp of being able to join us, so we shall see what happens. So, quick wrap-up. We, as always, welcome your views on my website so you can see all of these podcasts. Done a little tweaking to some things. I think we finally got the audio podcast on Spotify. You know, I had a problem with that. Just you have to have a little tiny logo copy. You know, it's kind of like would be your CD album cover, I guess. And it has to be exactly square. And the one I had was not exactly square. It was like a few pixels off somewhere. So I finally fixed that, and I think Spotify has finally welcomed the Owner's Box into its domain. So I am always proud that very many of the most popular podcasting platforms have the Owner's Box, the original Gangsta, the audio podcast that started this all a year ago. And so if you want to see links to that and links to all of my After Dark episodes, please go to www.theownersbox2020.com. And you'll also see some pretty good content. I had a nice little piece up there about how all of the Hockomock League communities, the 14 towns that are involved in the 12 high schools in the Hockomock League, all voted for Joe Biden. A lot of southeastern Massachusetts didn't. So, but there, of course, they were all fraudulent votes. It's all big voter fraud. Absolutely. All voter fraud. It was by George Soros and who else? The radical left, AOC, you name it. It's all their fault. Oh, man, this feels good. I got to admit, on that Saturday, you know that the last episode I had out was finished before they announced that Biden had gone over 270 votes. I watched the television that next day and just had tears rolling out of my eyes, seeing all of these people coming out of their homes in the cities all over the country and just celebrating the end of the Donald Trump reign of terror. And yet, 72 million people still voted for him. You got 63 million in the last election. We have a lot of work to do in this country, folks. We really do. Okay, obviously, if you want to send comments and tell me to get off the friggin' political stuff, which probably isn't going to happen, try me at my email address, which is theownersbox2020@gmail.com. And I will always welcome snail mail. I'm getting interesting things in my mailbox these days. Actually, but I'm getting things in the mailbox. I'm happy about that. The Owner's Box, Post Office Box 272, Mansfield, Massachusetts, 02048. And that's the address for snail mail. So please, I say this every week. I mean it. Hand sanitizer, masks. I don't like where these COVID numbers are going, folks. It is really way too scary. I don't want to go through another lockdown. I don't mind telling you, people have disappeared off my radar since last February. And I'm scared to death about what may have happened. I mean, I look in the obituary columns, to be honest. Lucky so far, I haven't found anybody that I would miss. But I know of people, obviously, I know people who've had COVID, and I know people who've had relatives who've lost them through COVID, and we have to put this to an end. I honest to God think that a Biden administration will take a more serious approach to it. If we just can get through these last 60 days with Donald Trump, I think we'll be okay, I hope. But please, do your part. Wear the mask. It's not that much of a problem. And besides, we all look cool. We all look like thieves. Ne'er-do-wells. Yeah. We all look like we're an episode of Saint Elsewhere. For those of you who don't remember the show, I'll explain it some other time. Great medical drama with a strange ending on NBC. So, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm really happy to be here. As always, I'm happy when you're here. And please stay well, stay safe, treat your friends with a newfound love and appreciation for all things big and small. And just remember, it's going to be a better world starting in January. Thanks again. Good night, everybody.